Did you know that a single man's ambition could change the course of history? His name was Julius Caesar, and his rise to power transformed Rome from a struggling republic into one of the greatest empires the world has ever seen. Julius Caesar was more than just a military leader. He was a visionary, a strategist, and a man of incredible influence. His journey from a young soldier to the most powerful man in Rome is a story of ambition, courage, and destiny. In this video, you will hear the full story of Julius Caesar. You will learn how he built his power, how he led his armies to victory, and how his decisions changed the fate of nations. As you listen, you will also improve your English skills, learning new words, understanding deeper meanings, and connecting with one of history's most captivating tales. So sit back, listen carefully, and let the story of Julius Caesar unfold. Because this is not just a story, it is a journey through history, power, and legacy. Did you know that one of history's greatest leaders started with nothing but ambition? His name was Julius Caesar, and his rise to power would change the world forever. Julius Caesar was born in Rome in 100 BC. His family was part of the patrician class, the ancient nobility of Rome. But despite their noble status, his family was not wealthy. Growing up, Caesar saw the struggles of the Roman Republic. Political chaos and corruption were everywhere. Rome was divided between the rich and the poor. He watched as powerful families fought for control of the Senate. He learned quickly that power was everything in Rome. From a young age, he knew he wanted to be part of that power. His father died when he was just 16 years old. Suddenly, he became the head of his family. It was a heavy responsibility, but Caesar did not back down. He began studying law and politics. He learned about the history of Rome, its leaders, and its battles. He listened carefully, watched closely, and prepared himself for the future. But life in Rome was dangerous. Political enemies were everywhere. Powerful men who lost their power were often killed or exiled. Caesar understood that he had to be careful. He aligned himself with powerful families and made important connections. He knew that allies were as important as enemies. His first major challenge came when the Roman dictator Sulla took power. Sulla was ruthless. He killed his political enemies without mercy. Caesar's family had connections to Sulla's rivals. This put him in danger. To protect himself, Caesar left Rome. He joined the army and began his military career. It was in the army that Caesar began to prove his skills. He fought in battles across the Roman territories. He showed bravery and intelligence on the battlefield. His soldiers respected him because he fought alongside them. He did not hide behind others. He led from the front, and they followed him without question. Caesar quickly rose through the ranks. His leadership and courage were clear to everyone. He won battles, gained experience, and built his reputation. But Caesar was not just a soldier. He was a thinker. He studied strategy and politics. He learned how to lead not just with strength, but with intelligence. When Sulla died, Caesar returned to Rome. He was older, stronger, and wiser. He knew it was time to begin his path to power. He entered politics with ambition and confidence. He became a lawyer and began speaking in the courts of Rome. His speeches were powerful, his arguments sharp. People began to notice him. He was young, but he spoke with authority. He understood the law and used it to his advantage. He did not come from great wealth, but he knew how to win people over. He helped the poor, he supported the common people, and they loved him for it. Caesar knew that to gain power in Rome, he needed allies. He aligned himself with powerful men like Crassus, one of the richest men in Rome. Crassus saw potential in Caesar. He supported him financially and politically. Together, they began to build their influence in the Senate. But Caesar wanted more. He knew that true power came not just from wealth, but from military strength. He wanted to command armies, to lead men into battle. He joined the Roman army once again, this time as a leader. He was sent to Spain, where he commanded troops and led campaigns. His military strategies were brilliant. He won battles with fewer soldiers, using speed and surprise to his advantage. His reputation as a military leader grew. He returned to Rome as a hero. His victories in Spain earned him respect and fear. He used this momentum to secure a position as consul of Rome. As consul, Caesar had real power. He passed laws that helped the poor and expanded his influence. He became known as a man of the people, but Caesar did not stop there. He wanted more. He knew that to control Rome, he needed to control its armies. He set his eyes on Gaul. Gaul was a large region to the north of Rome, filled with tribes that did not follow Roman rule. Caesar saw an opportunity. He wanted to conquer Gaul and bring it under Roman control. The Senate gave him command of the Roman legions in Gaul. This was his chance to prove his strength, to expand Rome, and to secure his power. Caesar led his armies into Gaul with confidence. His soldiers followed him without question. They believed in him, and he believed in them. The battles were fierce. The tribes of Gaul were strong and fearless, but Caesar was relentless. He fought battle after battle, pushing deeper into their territory. His strategies were brilliant. He used the landscape to his advantage. He built fortifications, set traps, and outsmarted his enemies. The people of Rome began to hear of his victories. News of his success spread through the streets. He became a legend, a hero of the people. But with each victory, his enemies grew more afraid. They saw his power growing, and they began to plot against him. Caesar, however, did not fear them. He continued his campaign in Gaul, determined to bring the entire region under Roman control. His soldiers fought with loyalty and courage. They knew that with Caesar they could achieve greatness. And Caesar knew that with them he could change the world. Caesar's campaign in Gaul was one of the greatest military achievements in history. For nearly a decade, he led his army through the lands of modern-day France, Belgium, and parts of Germany. The tribes of Gaul were strong and fearless. They fought fiercely to protect their lands, but Caesar was relentless. He built bridges across rivers that were thought to be impossible to cross. His engineers constructed fortifications that withstood any attack. The Roman legions under his command became stronger and more disciplined. They followed his orders without question, trusting his leadership completely. Caesar's strategy was simple but effective. He would divide his enemies and conquer them one by one. He moved quickly, attacking with speed and precision. He studied the tribes, learned their weaknesses, and struck where they were most vulnerable. His soldiers respected him not just as a commander, but as a warrior. He fought alongside them, sharing their struggles, their victories, and their losses. This loyalty made his army nearly unstoppable. The most famous battle of his campaign was the Siege of Alesia. It was here that Caesar faced one of his greatest challenges. The leader of the Gallic tribes, Vercingetorix, had united the tribes against Rome. He gathered a massive army and prepared to face Caesar in one final battle. Vercingetorix chose the city of Alesia as his stronghold. It was heavily fortified and surrounded by high walls. He believed it would be impossible for Caesar to break through. But Caesar was not afraid of challenges. He ordered his men to build two massive walls around the city. One wall was to keep the Gauls inside, and the other was to protect the Romans from outside attacks. The construction was a masterpiece of engineering. The walls stretched for miles, guarded by towers and traps. Vercingetorix and his army were trapped inside. Food and supplies began to run out. Vercingetorix sent for help, and thousands of Gallic warriors came to break the siege. But Caesar was ready. His walls held strong, and his soldiers fought bravely. The battles were fierce, but the Roman army did not back down. The Gallic reinforcements attacked from the outside, while Vercingetorix's men attacked from within. Caesar's army was surrounded, but he did not waver. He commanded his men to hold their positions. He led from the front, fighting alongside his soldiers. His presence gave them courage. The siege lasted for weeks, but Caesar's strategy worked. The Gallic reinforcements were defeated, and Vercingetorix was forced to surrender. The siege of Alesia was a turning point in the war. It marked the end of major resistance in Gaul. Rome now controlled the entire region. Caesar returned to Rome as a hero. His victories in Gaul made him one of the most powerful men in Rome. His name was spoken with respect and fear. But not everyone was happy with his success. Some of the leaders in Rome began to worry about his growing power. They feared that Caesar wanted more than just military victories. They suspected that he wanted control of Rome itself. The Senate grew uneasy. Powerful men like Pompey, who had once been his ally, turned against him. Caesar knew that his success in Gaul had changed everything. He was no longer just a general. He was a symbol of power. His army was loyal to him, not to Rome. His soldiers would follow him anywhere. This made him a threat to the established order. The Senate demanded that he disband his army and return to Rome alone. They wanted to strip him of his power. But Caesar refused. He knew that if he returned to Rome without his army, he would be arrested or worse. He had a choice: surrender his power or fight for it. He chose to fight. His decision would change the course of history. On a cold day in January, Caesar stood before the Rubicon River. Crossing it with his army would mean war. It would be a declaration of defiance against Rome. He paused for a moment, understanding the weight of his choice. Then he spoke the words that would become legendary. "The die is cast. He led his army across the Rubicon, marching towards Rome. His decision could not be undone. War was coming, and Rome would never be the same. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon, there was no turning back. It was an act of rebellion against the Senate and against Rome itself. Civil war had begun. Caesar marched his army towards Rome with confidence. His soldiers were loyal, his strategies were sharp, and his reputation as a leader was unmatched. The news of his approach spread quickly. Panic took hold of the Senate. Many senators fled the city, fearing Caesar's power and the strength of his army. One of those who fled was Pompey, once Caesar's ally and now his greatest rival. Pompey had been given control of Rome's forces, but he knew that Caesar's army was stronger. Pompey retreated to Greece, gathering his forces and preparing for war. He believed that with enough time, he could build an army strong enough to defeat Caesar. But Caesar did not wait. He moved swiftly, taking control of Italy without much resistance. City after city opened its gates to him. His reputation as a fair and powerful leader made it easy. Caesar sent messages to Rome, promising peace if the Senate would accept him. But the Senate refused. They saw him as a tyrant, a man who wanted to destroy the Republic. So Caesar prepared for war. He knew that the final battle would be against Pompey. It would decide the future of Rome. The two armies met at Pharsalus in 48 BC. Pompey's army was larger, better supplied, and well-positioned. But Caesar was a master of strategy. He used his smaller army to his advantage, moving quickly and striking hard. His soldiers fought with skill and discipline, pushing back Pompey's forces. The battle was fierce, but Caesar's tactics proved too strong. Pompey's army collapsed and his soldiers fled the battlefield. Pompey himself escaped, fleeing to Egypt in search of safety. But his hope for refuge was short-lived. Upon his arrival, he was betrayed and killed by Egyptian forces. When Caesar arrived in Egypt, he was presented with Pompey's head. He was deeply saddened by his rival's death. Despite their differences, Pompey had once been his friend. Caesar decided to stay in Egypt for a while. It was there that he met Cleopatra, the young queen fighting for control of her throne. Caesar saw an opportunity. He helped Cleopatra win her civil war, securing her position as queen. Their alliance grew stronger, and she became both his ally and lover. Their partnership brought stability to Egypt and strengthened Caesar's influence in the region. But Rome was not at peace. Caesar still had enemies in the Senate. Many feared his growing power. They saw his victories not as triumphs for Rome, but as steps towards dictatorship. But Caesar did not slow down. He returned to Rome with more power than ever before. The people welcomed him as a hero, but the Senate watched with fear. Caesar made it clear that his rule would bring change. He began massive reforms. He redistributed land to the poor, reformed the tax system, and created jobs. He expanded citizenship, giving more people the rights of Roman citizens. He reformed the calendar, creating the Julian calendar, which is still the basis for the calendar used today. These changes made him popular with the common people. They saw him as a leader who cared about their struggles. But with each change, his enemies grew more nervous. They saw his power increasing and feared that he would soon declare himself king. Caesar ignored the whispers of conspiracy. He continued his work, believing that Rome needed strong leadership. He even declared himself dictator for life. The Senate grew restless. Powerful men like Brutus and Cassius began to plot against him. They believed that Caesar's power threatened the very foundation of the Republic. But Caesar remained confident. He had defeated armies, conquered lands, and brought peace to Rome. He believed that his position was secure. He did not see the danger growing around him. He did not know that the very men he trusted were preparing to strike. Rome was changing. Caesar was leading it into a new era. But not everyone wanted that change. His enemies gathered in secret. They planned, they plotted, and they waited. The stage was set for betrayal, and Rome would never be the same again. Caesar's power in Rome grew stronger with each passing day. His reforms were popular among the people, but the Senate grew more fearful. They saw his actions as a threat to the Republic. He had been declared dictator for life, a title that made many uneasy. Rome had not had a king for centuries, and Caesar's power seemed too great. The whispers of conspiracy grew louder. Senators like Brutus and Cassius believed that Caesar wanted to be king. They feared that Rome's democracy would be destroyed. Brutus was not just any senator, he was a friend of Caesar. Caesar trusted him completely. He believed that Brutus was loyal to him, but Brutus was torn. He loved Caesar, but he loved Rome more. He believed that Caesar's power would destroy the Republic. Cassius convinced him that there was only one way to save Rome. They began to plan in secret. A group of senators gathered, whispering in dark corners, plotting the unthinkable. They called themselves the Liberators. They chose a date to strike, the Ides of March, March 15, 44 BC. It was a day that would change history forever. Caesar received warnings. Friends and even strangers told him to beware the Ides of March, but Caesar did not listen. He believed he was untouchable. On the morning of March 15, Caesar prepared to go to the Senate. His wife, Calpurnia, begged him to stay home. She had dreams of his death, terrible dreams that filled her with fear. But Caesar was confident. He believed in his power and his destiny. He kissed his wife goodbye and walked out the door. As he entered the Senate, the conspirators surrounded him. They smiled, they greeted him, and they walked by his side. But their smiles hid daggers. Their greetings masked betrayal. They moved closer, tightening the circle around him. Suddenly, the first dagger struck. Caesar was stunned. He turned to see who had attacked him, but then another dagger came, and another. The senators, one by one, stabbed him. His body was struck over and over, 23 times in total. Blood spilled onto the marble floor. Caesar fell to his knees, his strength leaving him. He looked up and saw Brutus standing over him, a dagger in his hand. "Et tu, Brute," Caesar whispered. The words were filled with disbelief and pain. Brutus, his friend, was part of the plot. Those were Caesar's last words. He fell to the ground, lifeless. Rome's greatest leader was dead, betrayed by those he trusted most. The Senate was silent. The conspirators stepped back, their hands stained with blood. They believed that they had saved the Republic. But Rome did not celebrate. The people mourned Caesar's death. He had been loved by many. His reforms had helped the poor. His leadership had brought stability. Riots broke out in the streets. The people demanded justice. The conspirators were forced to flee, their plan to save Rome backfiring. Caesar's body was carried through the streets of Rome. Thousands came to mourn him, to honor his legacy. His friend, Mark Antony, delivered a speech that would become famous. Antony spoke of Caesar's greatness, his generosity, and his vision for Rome. He read Caesar's will, which left wealth and land to the citizens of Rome. The people wept, their sorrow turning to anger. They blamed the Senate, they blamed the conspirators. Rome was thrown into chaos. The death of Caesar did not save the Republic. Instead, it led to more war, more fighting, and the end of the Republic forever. Caesar's legacy lived on. His death marked the beginning of a new era. His adopted heir, Octavian, would rise to power, becoming the first emperor of Rome. The age of emperors began, and Rome would never be the same again. The death of Julius Caesar shook Rome to its core. The streets were filled with chaos and mourning. His assassination had been meant to restore the Republic, but instead, it plunged the city into deeper conflict. Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal friend and ally, seized the moment. He delivered a powerful speech at Caesar's funeral, one that would be remembered for centuries. He spoke not of Caesar's faults, but of his generosity, his leadership, and his love for the people of Rome. He read Caesar's will to the crowd, revealing that Caesar had left money and land to the citizens. The people were moved. Their grief turned to anger. They wanted justice for Caesar. They saw the conspirators not as heroes, but as murderers. Riots broke out in the streets. The city burned with rage. The conspirators, including Brutus and Cassius, were forced to flee for their lives. Mark Antony knew that this was his chance. He allied himself with Caesar's adopted heir, Octavian, and a powerful general named Lepidus. Together, they formed the Second Triumvirate. Their goal was simple: to hunt down the conspirators and restore order to Rome. But power is never easily shared, and the alliance was fragile. Antony and Octavian led their forces against Brutus and Cassius. The decisive battle took place at Philippi in 42 BC. The fighting was brutal. Soldiers clashed on the battlefield, swords and shields crashing together. The earth shook with the weight of war. In the end, Brutus and Cassius were defeated. Both men took their own lives, knowing that they had failed. The Republic was gone, and the path to an empire was set. With their enemies defeated, Antony and Octavian turned back to Rome, but peace was short-lived. The alliance that had brought them victory began to crack. Octavian, young but ambitious, saw Antony as a rival. Antony, powerful and respected, saw Octavian as a threat to his control. Their partnership grew tense. Antony's relationship with Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt, only made matters worse. Many in Rome saw it as a betrayal. Antony moved to Egypt, building his power alongside Cleopatra. Together they ruled with strength, but their connection to Rome weakened. Octavian saw his chance. He declared war on Antony and Cleopatra, accusing them of plotting against Rome. The final battle would take place at sea, at Actium in 31 BC. Octavian's navy was powerful, well-organized, and determined. Antony and Cleopatra fought bravely, but they were outmatched. Their ships were destroyed, their forces scattered. Defeated, Antony and Cleopatra retreated to Egypt. They tried to rebuild, but their power was gone. Octavian's forces closed in, and the end was near. In a final act of desperation, Antony took his own life. Cleopatra followed soon after, choosing death over capture. Octavian returned to Rome as the sole ruler. The Republic was gone. In its place, an empire was born. Octavian took the name Augustus, becoming Rome's first emperor. Julius Caesar's dream of a stronger Rome had been realized, but not as a republic. His death led to the birth of the Roman Empire, a legacy that would last for centuries. Rome grew stronger, larger, and more powerful than ever before. Augustus ruled with strength and vision, leading Rome into a golden age of peace and prosperity. But the memory of Caesar never faded. Statues were built in his honor, his name spoken with respect and fear. He became a symbol of power, ambition, and change. His life and death marked the end of one era and the beginning of another. The name Caesar would live on, not just as a memory, but as a title. Emperors across the world would call themselves Caesar, a tribute to the man who changed Rome forever. Julius Caesar's legacy did not end with his death. His influence stretched far beyond his life, shaping the future of Rome and the world. When Octavian took the name Augustus and became the first emperor of Rome, he carried with him the vision that Caesar had started. The Roman Empire grew stronger, more organized, and more powerful. Augustus ruled for over 40 years, leading Rome into what became known as the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. This was a period of stability and prosperity that lasted for more than 200 years. Roads were built, cities flourished, and trade expanded across Europe, Asia, and Africa. Rome became the center of the world, a symbol of power and innovation. But it was not just Augustus who carried on Caesar's legacy. The very title of Caesar became a symbol of leadership and power. Future emperors called themselves Caesar, and even leaders of distant lands adopted the name. The Russian czars and the German kaisers took their titles from Caesar's name. His influence reached far beyond the borders of Rome, inspiring leaders across the world. The Roman Empire continued to grow, reaching its peak under Emperor Trajan. At its height, it covered more than 5 million square kilometers and ruled over 70 million people. This vast empire was built on the foundations that Caesar had laid. His military strategies were studied, his political moves were imitated, and his vision of a strong, united Rome became a reality. But his legacy was not only political. Caesar's influence on culture and language was profound. Latin, the language of Rome, spread across the empire. It became the root of many modern languages, including Spanish, French, and Italian. The Julian calendar, introduced by Caesar, became the standard way of measuring time for centuries. It was the basis for the Gregorian calendar, which is still used around the world today. His writings, too, have survived the ages. His commentaries on the Gallic Wars are still studied by historians and students of military strategy. Caesar's story has been told in plays, books, and films. His name remains synonymous with power and ambition. He is remembered as a leader who rose from modest beginnings to reshape the world. But his legacy is not without debate. Some remember him as a hero, a man who brought order and strength to Rome. Others see him as a dictator, whose ambition led to the fall of the Republic. His life and death continue to be a symbol of power, betrayal, and change. His story serves as a reminder of the cost of ambition and the fragility of power. Even today, the phrase, crossing the Rubicon, is used to describe a decision that cannot be undone. It is a testament to the impact of Caesar's choices and the boldness of his actions. Julius Caesar may have lived over 2,000 years ago, but his legacy remains alive. His name is still spoken with respect, his story still taught in classrooms, his influence still felt in politics and culture. He was more than just a man, he was a force of history, a leader whose dreams changed the world, a symbol of power, vision, and ambition. Julius Caesar's life ended with betrayal, but his legacy lived on. Through the rise of the Roman Empire, the spread of its culture, and the echoes of his name across history, Caesar became immortal. His story is a reminder that greatness is not just achieved, it is remembered. Julius Caesar's life may have ended with betrayal, but his legacy lived on for centuries. His vision of a united Rome became a reality through the Roman Empire, shaping the world for generations to come. Even after his death, his name inspired leaders, his strategies were studied by generals, and his influence stretched across continents. The story of Julius Caesar is a reminder that true power is not easily won and not easily forgotten. Thank you for joining us on this journey through his life. If you were inspired by his story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. And let us know in the comments, what part of Julius Caesar's journey surprised you the most? Remember, history is more than just dates and events. It is the story of people who shaped the world we live in today. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep discovering the power of history.